Imagine this. You are sound asleep in your bed, but for some reason during the night you're awake, only to find your body completely paralyzed. You are concerned and try to move or call out, but no matter how hard you try, you cannot. You begin to feel stressed and look around the room, only to notice something terrifying is watching you. Standing at the foot of your bed is what appears to be a dark, hunched-over figure, best described as an evil-looking witch. You really begin to panic now, as the figure begins to move closer to you. You remain frozen. She begins to climb on top of you. Still, you are unable to move. The entity grabs your hand, sticks it in her mouth, and bites down, crushing your bones. Hey Crypt Keepers, thank you so much for tuning into AmysCrypt. In today's episode we are going to be talking all about sleep paralysis. I'm also going to be sharing with you my personal most scariest sleep paralysis experience ever, which you guys should have already watched a little reenactment of, so I do hope that you enjoyed that. But before we really dive into the juicy stuff and, you know, I relay again what happened to me, and it actually terrified me, to be honest, I wanted to kind of backtrack and just talk about what sleep paralysis is, what it is like to experience it, because I know not everybody will have sleep paralysis during their lifetime, and there might be some of you out there that are like, what the heck is this sleep paralysis? What are we talking about? So sleep paralysis is basically waking up from sleep, but you find that your whole body is paralyzed. So imagine waking up in the middle of the night, it's dark, you can look around you, but you can't move any of your body. You're frozen, and you also can't really scream out, and this in itself is terrifying. But it kind of makes sense that this could happen, because when you do go into a sleep state, your body does get paralyzed, and that is so that you kind of don't act out your dreams or move around and like fall off of the bed or something. So picture that, you wake up and you're just kind of stuck. You can't move. Now it's also very, very common for people to hallucinate while this happens, and a lot of it can be visual, so you might actually see something, and a lot of people see entities in their room kind of looking at them, but it also could be auditory, so you might hear something, and a lot of people report to hear like sinister, creepy like whispers or things being said into their ears, but they can't necessarily see what it is. And I tell you what, usually the things that people see and the things that people hear are pretty terrifying. And the thinking behind why this happens is because you have maybe prematurely woken up. So you are awake, but you're also kind of like in a semi-dream state. So the things that you're seeing or hearing could be like remnants of dreams, really. Now I know that there are a lot of people out there that believe sleep paralysis events could actually be paranormal events. There could be, you know, a bit of paranormal substance to them, and it certainly does feel that way when you have sleep paralysis. When you're going through it and experiencing it, it seems so real. But there's also other people that believe that there's just, you know, it's a psychological thing. It's just part of humans being weird beings and having dreams. So yeah, it could just be your, you know, dream state mixing in with awake state, and then it produces the paralysis and seeing, hearing scary things. And this is such an interesting topic to delve into as well, guys. There's so many similarities between the sleep paralysis experiences that people have, and these similarities even span over different countries and different cultures. So it's very interesting to ponder, and I guess this is also where the paranormal aspect kind of plays in to people believing that it's the same kind of, or the same entities visiting multiple people. So a lot of people will report to see beings or entities standing at the foot of their bed, and they're almost like observing you, just kind of watching you. Sometimes they may kind of interact with you and come up a bit closer to you, and a lot of people, you know, report having them crawl up onto their chest, this crushing pressure on their chest, struggling to breathe, and that might be because there's an entity sitting right on you. So some of the common entities that people see are, of course, our favorite, the Hat Man. There's also a lot of people that say they've seen ominous, evil looking shadow figures. And then there's, you know, others who say that alien type beings visit them, or if you're very, very lucky, like myself, you might get a visit by the Old Hag. And in my opinion, she's the scariest one. And you got to remember, while you're getting visited by this scary looking entity, you can't move. So they're in the room with you, you can't scream out, you can't get up and run away. And you know, most people will see them kind of just standing there observing. As I said, some people have the being come up on top of them. I had an experience which I haven't heard of before, like specifically anyone having the same thing. So I wanted to make this video to see, you know, maybe what happened to me is way more common than I actually thought it was. But I'm interested to know if anyone has had an experience which is, you know, similar to mine. But what I went through was pretty dang disturbing, so I don't really wish it upon anyone, but I'm interested if it has happened to you, let me know in the comments. So I want to paint the full picture for you about my experience and kind of what was going on in my life at the time. So for me, I have had sleep paralysis a couple of times throughout my life. The time that I'm going to share with you guys was the worst and the scariest, but I have had it before and I know my triggers for it. Usually one of them is actually sleeping on my back. So I hate doing it. I never sleep on my back. And you know, the more I talk about this, the more you understand why. So I hate sleeping on my back, but also stress. Stress is a huge trigger for me to have sleep paralysis, and apparently it is for a lot of other people as well. So if you're going through a great deal of stress in your life, you're probably a lot more prone to, you know, have one of these experiences. And for me, basically where I was in my life, I had moved to the US from Australia with my husband. We were living there. I'd been there for 2 years and I was working in a job, working very, very hard, doing something that I didn't really want to do. You know, I had a goal though. I was working towards basically my dream job. I was eventually offered that job and I was just going through the process of, you know, organizing to go to Texas for a couple of months for training for this new role, and I was very, very excited. But then found out that my work approval, my working visa in the US was going to expire and I was going to not to be allowed to work in the country. And basically the only reason that that happened is because we followed some very, very poor advice that was given to us by the immigration people at the company, at my husband's, where he worked at the time. So I was devastated. I had to like leave my job, and basically what happened was I had to go on an emergency visa run. So my husband Jared and I went to Vancouver and stayed there for, I don't know how long, we were there for like 10 days or something. But we had to go to the US embassy or consulate and go through the whole visa process, and it was incredibly stressful. You can just picture the stress I was going through, right? So we booked into this hotel and we were staying there, and every friggin' night on that trip I had sleep paralysis. And I was so stressed out just going through the whole like visa process and just, you know, losing my job and trying to deal with them and everything that was going on. It was crazy. So we've got high stress. I'm also in a hotel room and it's just not a normal place for me to be sleeping. You know, I was just used to being at home in my apartment in San Francisco. And my sleep paralysis came to me like every single night, and it got kind of progressively worse. So basically I would go to bed at the end of the day, I'd, you know, lay down in bed, fall asleep, and then maybe the early hours of the morning I would generally wake up. The hotel room is very dark, but I can see a figure standing at the foot of the bed just staring at me, and there's just enough light to make out and see this figure. And to me, it's what is commonly referred to as the Old Hag. And yeah, that was a perfect descriptor of what she looked like. Like, no offense to her or anything, but she was very dark, you know, barely illuminated, because remember, this is at night, I am sleeping. You can just kind of make out the outline of her face. She has very harsh features, all like hunched over, kind of like if you just picture your classic stereotype of, you know, like a fairy tale witch. Like, she does not look nice or kind or inviting. Very scary, big, messy, dark hair kind of hanging over her face. And typically she's standing at the foot of the bed just watching me. And it was like this for, most of the nights, as we went on. It got worse until there was one event which was just insane. But basically when I would see her, I would be frozen, kind of freaking out that there's this woman in the hotel room looking like she does, looking at me. I would try and struggle to kind of scream or move. Eventually, I would break out of it. And the very first thing that I usually do when I have sleep paralysis is go for my husband, Jared. So I kind of snap out of it. I kind of tap him on the back and I'm like, wake him up and say, hey, I just had sleep paralysis. And just talking to him is something that kind of feels like it grounds me and makes sure that I'm in reality. So I like to do that. I don't think he likes it. He's normally his response is, ugh, you just had sleep paralysis, just roll over, go back to sleep, go back to sleep. It's very hard just to go back to sleep when you just sin what you sin, right? The longer that we were there, the more sleep deprived, the more stressed I was getting. And there was just this one night that I kind of woke up in my paralyzed state. I looked down at the end of bed. There she was again. I mean, you would see them every night, but they're still scary as heck. They still freak you out. Doesn't matter, how aware of, what is going on you think that you are. I don't feel like you're going to be at a point where you're just like, whatever, this is just what it is now. But I sin her. And on this particular night, she actually did come closer to me. She very slowly, wanders over to me and kind of gets down real low to the level that I am on the bed. And it was just the most horrific thing that has ever happened to me and probably ever will. My arms were outside of the quilt on top of all the blankets. And she comes ever closer to my hand and kind of opens her mouth real slow, picks up my hand and puts my fingers in her mouth, and she starts eating them. And I could hear her crunching down on the bones and breaking and munching and eating the bones in my fingers. It was horrible. Now I kind of snapped out of it then, and I was distraught. I was just freaking out, obviously. I mean, this was sleep paralysis, like a dream, so my hand wasn't actually messed up or anything, thank God. But it was the weirdest thing. So again, I roll over, tap Jared. He's like, sleep paralysis, just go back to sleep. And I'm all sweating and gross. So that happened. And to me, that was the worst sleep paralysis that I have ever had. And I'm so curious, I want to know, has anybody else had that? Am I the only weirdo that has had the old hag come over and chew on their fingers? I hope not. I mean, maybe I hope that I am. I don't want anyone else to go through that. But I also have another story that happened on this same trip. And I can't tell you that this one was the sleep paralysis. I'm still not sure what this was, but hear me out. So it felt a lot like all of the other sleep paralysis, episodes. This was after the finger munching, by the way. Finger munching sounds so weird. So this was after that kind of night, and I guess by this point I was super stressed. I was super sleep deprived. I've been, not wanting to go to sleep at night. It was horrible. So on this particular night, I see the old hag again, and I'm like, oh my God, she better not come over and try to eat me again. So, I was struggling to try and wake myself up as you do, even though you're paralyzed and you can't move. Eventually I squirmed out of it. She didn't come over to me. She didn't try to eat me or anything like that. But this is where it gets really weird. So I felt like that was a normal sleep paralysis episode. I came out of it. I do my normal, roll over to tap Jared on the back and say, oi, something's just happened to me, help me. And I did that. And I look over at him, and he kind of rolled over and his face looked messed up. It was Jared, but he looked different. And then, I don't know how to explain it, his jaw could detach like a snake or something, and his mouth could open up really wide, like huge slits down the side of his face, and his mouth could just open like that. Like a snake. He kind of, yeah, opened his mouth really wide. And because my hand was over there, because I had kind of tapped him on the back, it was like he was coming to swallow my hand like a friggin' python or something. And then that scared me enough to like officially wake me up. I don't know what that was. So I can't say that was sleep paralysis. The first start of that event felt like sleep paralysis, where, you know, I saw the hag and then I woke up, I rolled over. That didn't feel like sleep paralysis because I wasn't paralyzed anymore. That felt quite real, but more like it could be a dream. So I'm not sure if I even had sleep paralysis or that whole thing was a dream where, you know, you're having a dream within a dream, like you wake up within a dream. And I know people that have, you know, told me stories about having that, where they've woken up within a dream. That seems more normal and explainable, but I don't know, the start of this dream, if it even was a dream, felt like sleep paralysis. And I don't know, Jared just freaked me out. Now, you know, and after that, I was just like really scared to go to sleep. It was like I couldn't even trust Jared. He was always the one that kind of like solidified where I was. I was in bed, it's fine, you had sleep paralysis, this is reality, this is real. And then I'm like, oh, you friggin' snake, man. All this time, I should have known. So thankfully, guys, I haven't actually had any more sleep paralysis since that moment. So that was a couple of years ago, and I was incredibly stressed at the time. To me, I feel like that is a pretty good explanation of why it did happen to me, though there are some people that believe it is paranormal and the entities that visit you specifically because you're going through stress, because you're going through a tough time, and they like, you know, to feed off of that and just put fear into your heart, and then they feed more off of the fear. I don't know if that is the case and that old hag was there trying to scare me more and feed off my fear and feed off my stress. Like, I don't know, that sounds creepy to me and disturbing, but I mean, at the same time, I feel like it was very explainable by the stress that I was going through. So I really would love to hear from you guys. Do you have opinions on sleep paralysis? Maybe you think it's paranormal, maybe you don't. Maybe you have an opinion about what happened to me. Like, do you think that I was actually, the second episode was actually a dream or half sleep paralysis, or what? Maybe you've had your own scary sleep paralysis experience. I would love to hear about it if you feel, you know, like you want to share it in the comments below. I read all my comments, so it's great to hear from other people that have had similar things happen, and I love reading scary stories. So if something scary has ever happened to you, let me know. But also, if you have had an experience that is quite similar or of a similar nature to me, like where something has started to like chew on you or bite you or hurt you in some way, please leave me a comment and like let me know about it. I hope that isn't the case, but you know, it might be more common than I actually believe right now. Now, if you guys do like this video, also let me know, because I have a couple of other sleep paralysis stories that I can talk to. I also have one special one that I'm probably going to make a video on regardless. This one actually has to do with Jared a lot, and I tell you what, I think about it all the time. This is so friggin' interesting, and I think it'll like mess with your minds when I tell you about it. It's totally different to like any of like the real ghostly paranormal stories or anything that I've told on my channel. I think that it's something very unique, and I am curious to know if as well that story translates to more people and it's more common than I just know about it at this moment. But I do want to thank you guys for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please remember to like, comment, share and subscribe. That really helps me out. If you want to do reading about any of the haunted locations I visited from all around the world, head to my website, AmysCrypt.com. You guys can also follow me. I'm posting extra content on my social medias. So I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and I'm also making TikTok videos right now, and I'm having a lot of fun with it, so you can follow me over there. There's also more bonus content that you could find on my Patreon and my YouTube memberships, and I'm linking them below. But thank you so much for watching, Crypt Keepers. Until next time.